Thursday night, friends. I am your host, Cheats. I am here with EJ the Collector, and I am joined by the misunderstood villain himself, TG, as well. Fellas, welcome to the program. Elliot, how we feeling?
I am here. I am present. I'm accounted for, and I'm accountable. It's great to see you guys. Great to have all our fans out there. Follow us on our socials. I want to get that out of the way early. Collector's Choice. I hadn't had this. I had this guy I had not picked up yet from a couple of series ago, but a little discounted. So he came in the mail today. I am all about the story of Hobbs right now.
The
So I
Book
picked
of Hobbs. It's
the
the
Book of
Book of
Hobbs.
Hobbs if
Book
you
of
watched it
Hobbs.
last night.
That's right. That's right. Book of Hobbs. Misspoke. Here it is. Little discount from ringsidecollectibles.com, but he looks good. I'm really into his storyline right now. I want to see more of him. It's great to see you boys. Let's get it on.
It is indeed a new era in AEW, and it is a new story for the Book of Powerhouse Hobbs. So we'll see how that goes. TG, how we feeling today?
I feel great. I feel fantastic. I feel healthy.
That's great. That's great. Being that what we talked about right before we went on the air, I'm glad you are feeling healthy, as
That's
we
right.
all should be. I'm playing a little hurt today, as I've been playing hurt since Thanksgiving. It's been one of those things that's been going around. Anybody that has children, that's especially elementary school age, I'm sure like half the elementary school is out with some type of flu, virus, cold, or let's hope not COVID. But it is going around, and I have picked it up like everyone else. So we're hoping for the best. But let's start this show off this week, as we started off every Thursday we can. I will start with you, Elliot. What are you popping for this week? It is clearly a new era.
Yeah, I'd say, because I'm wearing the scarf, we're going to dedicate so much to it. The crowning of MJF definitely popped me. But what actually made me jump out of my seat this week and made me actually pop was the return of my girl, Ruby Soho. Really happy to see her back in the ring. Got a little revenge on Tay Mello, who put her into action for a couple of weeks. So when I was watching the replay of Dynamite, because I was a little behind and busy last night, actually did sort of pop when I saw her. The music hit. She was behind Tay, laid her out, got some revenge. That popped me. A lot of things have popped me in the last week or so of wrestling, but that one I'll just mention. That one got me.
It was a good return. It's wrestling, so they highlight that Conti put her out and she had to have her face reconstructed. They did not say that it was because of what could have been one of the worst botches we've seen in a wrestling ring in a long time. But I am glad that Ruby was back. I was excited to see her, and I wonder if this story continues. They're building a story now with Anna Jay, Ty Conte, Willow Nightingale, some other characters. So it's nice to see Ruby get back in there, get her revenge, and hopefully it's a story that continues.
Ruby's best moments have been when she's debuted or returned. It's always when she's looked strongest and most
And she looked good.
visually like looks like
Yeah,
she should be
she
the
looked
one of
healthy.
the top stars. Have been sort of these very few moments when she's been gone for a while and reappeared, like last night when she debuted in the middle. Not entirely her fault, but I'm really happy she's back.
I'm happy she's back too. TG, what are you popping for this week?
Do I need to confine it to AEW or can it be an
No, no, no. We didn't.
landscape?
Full disclosure, we didn't have a Tuesday show, so we can branch out, my man. We can branch out.
I mean, for me, the very obvious choice is the main event of Survivor Series, War Games. I think it's not just within the genre of wrestling, but in all of entertainment. I think it is one of the most interesting, well-told stories that we have on
Agreed.
television.
Agreed.
I'm really excited about to see where the Bloodline storyline goes, because I think, as we've talked about in the past, there are many different directions this could go, all of which, or many of which, could be great. And so I'm excited to see where it goes next.
I'm
Well,
just excited to see not so much where as when as well. The
yeah, I
particular
mean,
timing of some of these moments that we're going to need to have happen to make this story sort of fully come the way we're all expecting it to go. A matter of when they pull certain things off will be most exciting, or as exciting as where it inevitably leads.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but as of right now, with the calendar that they have currently, there are only 2 premium live events between now and WrestleMania. It's just a Royal Rumble and then Elimination Chamber, and that's it. Is that right?
That's it. That's all
correct.
I got. Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, they got to figure it out because there's only so many major beats in the story you'll have available to you.
Well, the interesting part is, which is most exciting, because I do think, and we talked about this even pre-War Games, is I think we kind of know where this is heading as we head towards WrestleMania 2023 in Hollywood. The question really is, the plan 1A, which is the kind of the pie in the sky, we get The Rock versus Roman, versus the other plan, I guess 1AB, you know what I mean? And as this story has gone along with Sammy, now KO, and all the bloodline, 1B doesn't seem. I was at the point, if you'd asked me this, in the beginning of the year, probably anytime after WrestleMania, going into this, I would have said, if you don't get The Rock versus Roman, I'd have been extremely disappointed. That's where I was, because it was like Hollywood. That's where it is. Keep the belt on him until he fights The Rock, and then we see what happens. They have done such a good job with this bloodline story that they're telling down. Where if it was, Roman versus Sammy or Roman versus KO at WrestleMania, I'm okay with it. I'm excited with it. It would be Roman versus KO with Sammy in KO's corner or something of that nature.
I tell you,
really
Sammy versus Jay would be an ideal main event blow off too. There's lots of possibilities.
It's not a WrestleMania main event unless they have the belt, but you're working your way to Sammy and KO versus the Usos for the tag title. There's just so many things that they can do now because they've told this story so well that I think otherwise I would have been extremely disappointed.
I completely agree. And I think, again, if you go back 2-3 months on the show, I said something like, I don't think this is likely, but it is now not outside the realm of possibility that Sami Zayn could be the guy who ultimately takes the titles off Roman.
Yep.
And as we were talking about it then, like in the late summer, early fall, I was saying he's not at the top of the list at that point, but I said he's on the list, which in and of itself is remarkable and a testament to how well they have constructed the story and how well Sami Zayn has done as a performer.
Amazing.
Now we're at the point where I'm like, if they don't have if Rock is not available, I think it's Sammy. I think I think Sammy's the guy who does it, which is mind blowing. But
I think it's a testament to what they've done. I think it's a really they've put themselves in a really, really good place with this storyline, and it has legs now until WrestleMania that I think will have the entire wrestling world locked in.
Yeah. And meanwhile, I'm just imagining Cody Rhodes at home, just bittersweet, just like, God, what a time to get injured. Boy,
that's right. Yeah.
Hey, look, timing is everything. I think he'll find a place as he works his way back, but it won't be. He's got to wait. He's got to step aside and wait for this wave to move.
It's lightning in a bottle.
We do so much talking about Triple H now being in charge of creative. Help me refresh my memory on this, because forget the exact moment where was the Bloodline and Sammy right before Vince left? What had happened?
Yeah, Sammy was already aligned with them. Gosh, it's so hard to
I want to remember what Vince was responsible for and what started being responsible by Roman, Sammy, and Triple together.
Solo Sikoa was. I think he joined them right after Vince had left, because I think Clash of the Castle was after that.
Yeah, that might have been the first pay-per-view.
So that plan was probably in, because that was a fairly obvious thing that was going to happen at some point. So I think that was probably in motion, but all the stuff. So let me think here. I think so Vince was probably last around when Roman and McIntyre were doing their build. I think is probably around the time when it switched.
And let's be clear here. There's for all of the kind of quote unquote storylines, there's always, kind of principal creatives that are probably carrying some of these stories. It's probably not neither one of Vince or Triple H if we're thinking about it. what they could do, though, what Vince has always had the ability to do, is see an audience at a live event and say, change everything. And so it's the credit, I think, goes to one who's kind of got the creative idea to put this whole thing together, but also the fact that they haven't screwed it up. Like, they haven't seen, some weird turn at some weird show and say, because that's what Vince was known to do. Like, maybe 1 out of 10 pop, he sees it at some place and says, change the whole plan because this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that they stuck to this long-term storytelling and it's paying off, and ultimately will pay off, I think, at WrestleMania henceforward. If they stick to what they have now, which is gold, I think they have the best story in wrestling.
Yeah, and I think another guy who potentially, from a certain standpoint, he's a beneficiary of this overall, but I think in the end may wind up, I don't want to say being shortchanged, but maybe sort of collateral damage here is Kevin Owens. Because I think if Sammy had not gotten as just red hot as he was, Triple H, I mean, Kevin Owens is great. Triple H loves Kevin Owens. I think it would have been Kevin Owens and Roman if The Rock's not available at that point. And now I think I don't want it's not apples to apples, but it is somewhat similar to what happened at WrestleMania 30 with Dan O'Brien, where it was like, I mean, creatively, like Triple H and Vince, Triple H wanted the main event of WrestleMania to be his boys, Orton and Batista, which on paper made sense because Batista had been away. He was a Hollywood star at that point. You bring him back. You have Orton, who's obviously a major star. And just organically, the Dan O'Brien thing happened. And I think this is similar in that it's organic elevation, but it's instead of going against the current, the machine, the WWE, the whole time has been aligned with like, Sammy's red hot. Let's roll with it. And so
I still think very much so that it could be KO versus Roman at WrestleMania.
Oh, absolutely.
Like,
Absolutely.
I don't think it's Sammy. I think Sammy plays a major role. The question is, if it is KO and Roman, there's a chance that Sammy walks out with a bloodline and he leaves with KO. There could be a chance that, you know what I mean? If there's a chance that KO, they flip him before that, and it's Sammy and KO. Like, there's just so many things that they could do. Yeah. But I actually don't see yet Sammy versus Roman. You know what I mean? I see KO versus Roman.
What I think will happen is if The Rock's available, it's Sammy and KO for the tag titles.
Yeah, with The Rock,
and they and they probably win at WrestleMania in their streak, the Uso streak. I think if The Rock is not available, which is the more likely scenario, I think the main event is, if I had to guess at this point, is a triple threat with all three.
See, I mean, they can do that as well.
Oh, if I have to guess, I know we'll move on, but if I had to guess, I still think there's a place for Cody at the table. I think his injury was just so unfortunate, but I think just they're still playing some vignettes of him. They're keeping him very much in the consciousness. I think Cody will play a part in this too. I don't think Triple H has buyer's remorse or Vince's buyer's remorse entirely.
Cody? Oh no.
Yes. So I think his a return. It would only really make sense as a return and win at the Royal Rumble, which would be a great story. And I think that's the story we initially assumed when he went out because he was poised. So I think a logical conclusion is, to me, still feels like Sammy and KO versus the Usos because of Sammy and Jay. But like we've all said, it could really go any way at this point. I don't think it comes down to simply a bloodline implosion with KO and stays in that silo.
I'll tell you this: most interesting, as of right now, most interesting Royal Rumble in a long time.
Yeah,
gents, let's talk about the new era that has dawned over at Daly's Place at AEW. We are now fully, and if you watched all, I would say painfully staken 16 minutes last night on Dynamite, you saw the introduction of the MJF era as heavyweight champion, which I did find, I thought the 16 minutes was long. I thought it was classic MJF. Um, but there was some things that I thought was really, really kind of noteworthy of his 16-minute monologue rant. One of them is that because he's the greatest thing that's ever walked the earth, he will only wrestle unless you pay for it on pay-per-views. Guys, what do we think? Tom, I'll start with you. What did you think of the start of the MJF era, and obviously what it will ultimately be the outgoing, I think, out of the company of Lord William, who Tony Schiavone called Steven several times,
which
last
I
week.
love.
Regal.
Steve Regal. I think that if I were working in communications for AEW and I were on their social media team, I could take that 16-minute segment and make a fantastic 2-minute highlight package, sizzle reel for social. I think there were a lot of good elements to it. You know, obviously he is a genius when it comes to drawing sort of traditional heel heat. Great. The new belt, obnoxious, appropriately so. Good
The
fit.
Triple B, my man.
All great. The real issue I had with the promo, and I wouldn't really necessarily put this on MJF as a performer, is as we have discussed either in the group chat or on the show, the best storytelling is when you do it and people get it, rather than like what we've seen with the Miz and Loomis, where we're going to have 60-minute segments, 60-minute style segments where we sit down and painstakingly explain a bunch of backstory. And this was not as bad as that, but it was a lot of like, well, let me now talk about like, here's what happened with the firm. And it's like, well, this doesn't even, what you're saying doesn't really make sense. I mean, either have something that makes sense or just move on. Don't address it. Like, ignore it, move on. Like with LA Knight, when he, went back to being LA Knight, it was like a 30-second thing backstage. It's like moving on. It was that depth of sort of explanation and talking about it. And then the sort of predictable turn on Regal, but also really weird that they pull the trigger this quickly, unless, of course, Regal is really leaving, which was sort of what I was actually surprised he was there. I really did think that Moxley promo was really worded in a way that made me think like, this is interesting. I wonder if Regal's leaving. And then he was back. I was like, oh, I guess not. So overall, I thought too long, much like me talking right now. But I think there are good elements there. And of course, MJF he's a star. I mean, there's just other than Jade Cargill, I don't know if they have a bigger star in their homegrown star in their organization. So
we'll get to Jade Cargill soon. We will. Elliot, what did you think of the start of the MJF era?
TG, good takes. I am okay with this introductory promo getting the time it was allotted. As I was thinking about, because you were the first one to, maybe it was like mid promo or toward the show, you put in the group chat like, this was not good. I'm sure you step back a little bit from it, from maybe saying not good.
I would probably stand by that. I mean,
okay, so let's just go with that. Not good. Okay, so it made me sort of think about it, like, why isn't this good? Like, we love hearing MJ talk. He's great. So here's what it came down to me. If ever since All Out and the Brawl has added not diehard wrestling fans to just sort of even casually pay attention to the project, I'm okay with that being sort of a like, this is a coronation. Let me just catch you up on a few things. If anyone's going to do that, if anyone's going to draw out and have to do the things that TG you mentioned, I want it to be MJF doing it. So yeah, I think from what we've seen that he's able to do and what we've seen in wrestling that they can do with the things you mentioned, I'm okay with it being what it was last night. If they continue to do, if next week we get that same feeling, then I'll feel closer to what you do. But I'm basically okay because MJF is a huge star. First of all, his drip was amazing. Is it called drip? Is that what the kids call it? The suit he was wearing.
Wrong guy.
His Better Than You suit was fantastic. I like the Triple B belt. I think it's snazzy. Yeah, I mean, it was fantastic. He is the number one heel in wrestling only because Roman Reigns is 3/4 of a face too. So I'm okay with that. Didn't feel long to me. I like hearing him talk because with every explanation that was probably not needed, he was also completely insulting the fans and doing the best parts of him. And I'm confused with the whole Regal thing. Like maybe I didn't see anything. Like I'm curious about the length of his contract. I'm curious on whether he went to Tony and said, this isn't working for me. If Tony said, because he was as important an on-air figure over the last 4 or 5 months, 6 months, as almost anybody else. His back and forth with Excalibur is amazing. Up until recently, I thought the dirt sheets were like he had a 3-year contract. Like, did he sign I've seen everything from a 9-month contract to a 3-year contract. I don't get it. I think if it ends up that Regal is writing Regal off TV, and in 6 months we'll see him appear back in WWE. That's a huge blow for AEW. I'm very curious in how this is not working. The fact that I just assumed he'll be out for a while and he'll be the one who will assist Daniel Bryan, or Bryan Danielson. He'll slide him. Bryan Danielson wins the ring at that battle royale, and 6 months from now, Regal's sliding him in the ring to knock out MJF. Like something like that. It did not cross my radar that he is on his way out back to WWE, because that just seems like a complete ball dropped by AEW.
It never would have crossed my mind either if it hadn't been for the very specific wording of that Moxley promo. I'll tell you a couple things real quick. Number one, as far as like MJF sort of getting the audience caught up, I did see where Dynamite got the lowest rating in the demo that has ever gotten.
Really?
Yeah, ever. It's going bad.
Yeah, so that's
really
that's yeah. I was surprised too. I was like, that's weird, because I feel like people would want to see MJF's like first promo after he won the title. Second, I thought the and you alluded to it a minute ago. The best thing about that promo, or the thing that gets me most excited if I'm a big AEW fan, is he laid out kind of the blueprint for what his feuds are going to be. He threw out Eddie Kingston's name. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Ricky Starks is in the mix as well, and he talked about Ricky Starks, and then of course Bryan Danielson. And I'm like, that maps out the next few months. Those are great feuds, all of them. So that was great as well. And I think to your point about Regal, like it doesn't from the contract standpoint, you would assume he has at least a 1-year deal. He joined them in early March, I think. So we're still several months away from that deal expiring. And that's if it's a 1-year deal. If it is a 3-year deal, then I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
But if it's not, if the contract is, if what is happening is not him imminently departing, then the pacing of the booking is a bizarre choice for the reason that you just highlighted, which is he has been instrumental in the sort of the key stories that have unfolded on that show for the last year almost. And so the fact that you would turn him, then have the guy that he turned for turn on him a week and a half later, and then you write him off TV. And meanwhile, they have the Blackpool Combat Club, and this is a pet peeve I have about Tony Khan. You create these, you love factions. God, you love factions. You love factions. You create these factions. They're a big deal. And then they just kind of dissipate. The Pinnacle just kind of dissipated.
Mm-hmm.
The Inner Circle kind of dissipated. And now
they're JAS morphed.
Well, yeah, correct. I mean, they went away and then they
JAS came back,
recreated themselves as the JAS. But now it's like, okay, is the Blackpool Combat Club viable? Because the Blackpool part, that's Regal. Like, what's going on? And then on TV, it's unclear. So anyway, whatever's going on with Regal, it's going to be really important both to the driving force behind Max's future as the champ, and then also what's happening on the other side with like the Blackpool Combat Club and those guys. So
yeah,
they got to shed some light on this soon.
Yeah, my only thing is, and the only thing I could think of, and I didn't read it. I try not to read all the kind of the details of the behind the stage dirt sheet stuff. But the only thing I could actually think of is that Regal has a very unique personal relationship with Triple H. And if there was something that he joins AEW, then Vince leaves, and Triple H was like, hey, if there's ever a way that we can work this out, and he's like, hey, you're my guy. You've been my guy for this is the only thing. I don't know if this is the case. I don't know what their relationship is. But if they had a relationship where it's like, hey, if you ever get the reins, this would be the only thing that I would like come back and do this for, then that is something where I kind of understand on a personal level, right? If they just like bend over backwards and say, hey, Triple H is in charge now, Vince is not coming back, and I want to be there to help, this. Now, and again, Tony Khan, legally, all that stuff, contractually, they can do what they need to do and their competitors and so forth. But that's the only reason why I would say, like, why would you want to come back? Not because WWE is a bad place, but he just left. He literally just left.
Right.
And he's been treated at AEW, especially in terms of TV time and influence, very valuable, like very integral piece. So that's the part of me that says this could be a personal thing with him wanting to do right by Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and the powers that be over at the brass over at the WWE.
I think everything you just said I agree with you. I do think it's about a personal relationship and him really having a bond, especially with the people who are in charge now. The part that doesn't make sense to me is the part that you just mentioned a second ago, which is like, all from WWE's perspective, this all totally makes sense. But if you're Tony Khan and you're like, you got time left in your contract, and we have made you a bigger deal than you were in WWE, why would we do
that? I don't know. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't understand it. But it was even the little thing. It wasn't so much the Mox promo for me. It was the fact that Triple H, who's very disciplined and very smart, and doesn't really acknowledge other companies in that way outside of like, a fourth wall interview here and there, literally went out of his way to say this day wouldn't be right without Regal, a montage of Regal saying War Games.
Mm-hmm.
Like he tweeted that to everyone. And I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah,
so
that was interesting.
That was the thing for me that made me say, oh, he's coming back. Like you don't even like, he's trouble. He knows who he is, and he knows what his tweet would do. And yes, it is War Games, but it's clearly Regal on camera saying War Games like 4 times. And so I'm just like, all right, guys. It'll be interesting though if he comes back and how they use him. We've made comments here and in our group chat often about us not necessarily being overly satisfied with the WWE's commentary teams as they have lay waste now. Regal is great on the mic. It'd be interesting to see how they would, kind of forge forward. I do want to back up to one point, Tom, you said, and it was alluded to by none other than Jake Hager in the promo on Dynamite last night, if you saw it, who looked over at just Yuta and Claudio and said, the Blackpool Combat Club is falling apart.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. Like, Moxley clearly has less and less ties with Blackpool now. And rightfully so, he's a star in his own right. He's a big, he doesn't need that group, and he's not mentoring young kids like the group said they were going to at the beginning. Danielson now seems to have broken off from the group now, and he's, he wasn't like the picture of the entire Jericho Appreciation Society without Chris, and then just Yuta and Claudio, and this was like, hey, here's your Blackpool. I think it was a striking image, and I do think that they'll have to figure. Blackpool's just gonna have to go. They'll figure it out.
Yeah, they're going to figure it out by having Claudio lose and have to join JAS, and
right.
Yuta's going to just start getting less screen time because maybe they're coming around and saying Yuta's not ready yet, Garcia's not ready yet, but that's why we're bringing Claudio in.
I think that would be there's
all that at play, but yeah, I mean, I think that's you don't have Regal anymore, or at least for a while, but yeah.
I did like them pitching Claudio gimmick ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So
right,
they're like, you yodel.
Yeah, you're a great sports entertainer. Let's talk about that. I actually have taken to the team formerly known as 2.0 quite a bit. So I love Daddy Magic and Matt Menard and those guys, Angelo Parker. I think they're hilarious.
Yeah, here's a parallel that I'll draw for you real quick. Last thought on this. To me, there are parallels between Blackpool Combat Club and the Judgment Day on WWE. which is the original concept was super cool. It's like, a stable in Blackpool Combat Club, a stable of led by Moxley and Danielson as like mentors for up and comers. That sounds, with Regal in the backdrop. That sounds awesome, and it was awesome.
It's very cool.
Judgment Day, and this, to your earlier point, this is classic latter day Vince, where it's like Edge is going to take this group of people who aren't being used well, and he's going to elevate them. It's going to be awesome. They're going to be a great heel group. And all of a sudden it's like, let's have this guy turn, let's have them kick Edge out of the group that he founded. Why? And I think in that respect, they're both a little bit lost now because they've gotten away from that original thing. Although I will say Judgment Day, because of Rhea Ripley, has rallied a little bit, but they're still.
I think Judgment Day will go longer than Blackpool.
Yeah.
I think their legs are longer.
Yeah.
Let's switch gears to talk about while we have some time. I do want to talk about ratings, and I wanted to mention it, Tom. You alluded to it as well. AEW, as we speak right now, is in a really bad stretch. Like, I don't know if it's like, it's an alarm. I will say this. It is an alarming blip, and let's hope that it's a blip for AEW's sake. But they are drawing continuously now lower ratings than they were drawing a year ago, lower ratings than they drew 6 months ago. And ultimately, they put the belt on MJF. We knew it was coming, but the MJF era has turned the page. They were able to, as we talked about the other week, hit the reset button. The fans did not reset. One of the lower ratings so far.
What was the number yesterday? Do we know?
I don't
like
know.
how many 100,000? Like
I'll get to it, but it's bad. It's bad. And while I look up the specific number, do we have any what's the word? Any hypotheses, I guess, as why AEW has taken a hit as much as it has over the last, say, 2 months?
Well, we can get the obvious can be said. Is there a CM Punk factor? CM Punk was the biggest draw, bigger than John Moxley, as far as the consciousness of anyone who was somewhat interested in the current product. Is the lack of Kenny Omega in the Bucks? I mean, that post media scrum could be like where that watermark where it started going down. So yeah, I think it's all part of it. I think Punk
870,000.
I mean, that's somewhere 60 to 90,000 less than what they were doing. 800, weren't they like at 915 for a while? I mean, we're not talking about huge numbers, but I think it's a combination.
It's not the lowest ever, but it is the second. I think it's the second lowest ever.
Yeah.
Okay.
The story that I saw was specifically in the
demo. This is the 18 to 49.
18 to 49.
18 to 49.
Well, that's interesting. I give it a mix of no Punk, no Bucks and Omega, and general dysfunction the story of AEW has been more outside the ring than inside the ring. That's going to lead to this decline. And I think I'm hopeful it will rebound to a number that makes TK sweat less. But I mean, talk me out of how not having Punk has a lot to do with that.
I think it's a combination of things. I think to me, it's not so much Punk not being there per se. I think it's just the chaos that erupted and changing plans and having key people not on TV and having to kind of figure that out. I think that hurt them from sort of a week-to-week storytelling standpoint. And then the other thing is, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, but the biggest challenge and probably the biggest issue that I have with AEW is they just don't seem to have a coherent sort of long-term vision, with a couple of exceptions. Jade Cargill would be one exception to that. But overall, you think that, so this is the biggest example I can give you. For whatever flaws WWE had or has still, you always kind of knew where people stood on the roster, kind of what direction they were going in. And sometimes people would change directions, but again, there would be intentionality behind that. So
Mhm.
Max Decree becomes LA Knight, to use that example again. Like, we kind of know like what's happening there. AEW will have guys who seem important to the show. So if you're watching a random Dynamite in April and you're like, here's the list of guys who seem to be important, and then you watch another show, say 3 weeks later, some of those people wouldn't even be on the show, and not because of injuries. They just, it's like Lance Archer. Lance Archer's super important, and then he's not on the show, and then is he still on the roster? Oh, there he's back, and it's like he's gone. And that's one example. There are many examples like that. I think that is what hurts them week to week, because they can put on great wrestling matches,
And they do.
And I think so. The hardcore wrestling fan, not fans of hardcore wrestling, but the people who really like the craft of pro wrestling and salivate at the idea of, oh wow, Jun Akiyama is going to wrestle, Eddie Kingston, like that's amazing, like that kind of stuff. Those people are still going to tune in because they know they're going to get good matches. They know that Death Triangle is going to go out there and be unbelievable, etc. But what they're not going to get are people who are in sort of the balance of what they look for, are a little more tilted towards, they like the wrestling, but they want like the long-term character development and storytelling. And those people are going to be glued to the set when the Bloodline, for example, are out there. And with AEW, it's there's less of that kind of thing, I think, which I think so. The point being, as you're building audience over the course of months, not popping a rating in a given week because whoever came back or whoever's on this week on loan from Japan, that's a tougher thing to do. And I've said this before, AEW has a really deep fan base, loyal, committed, but WWE has a very wide fan base.
Oh yeah.
And that from a money standpoint is more important.
I think it's a household name issue as well. CM Punk is a household name, Elliot.
Yep.
He really is.
Yep.
Cody Rhodes is a household name. They have, like, I think, again, if you're trying to attract audiences to tune in and to see what a product that maybe the first couple of times they're watching it, they're going to want to see either household names, or as Tom said, they're going to want to see kind of stars coming every week and growing and ascending and really getting something that they can follow a long time. And I do think that AEW has their champion's MJF. We know and we love MJF. We think MJF is great. We think he's hilarious. MJF could, if he went on Good Morning America tomorrow, he's not a household name in the sense that Roman Reigns would be, right?
Right.
Or a number of WWE or Kofi Kingston and Big E. Like, they've got to figure out ways. And that's the one thing I really, really love about and I don't know if it's AEW that's doing it or if it's just Jade Cargill and she's just doing it herself. But, and especially urban media, media that's geared towards African Americans, like the Breakfast Club and Hot 97, Jade is showing up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Jade is getting like interviews and podcasts and doing things that are outside of what I would think even this kind of, I think it's stupid, but the feud with Bow Wow.
Yeah, what is that?
I think
this is what, and that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Is that you have this huge star, and you've got like this, like
no,
what?
No. I think what she's done with Jade in the sense of Shaq and Snoop and Trina, who know a lot, only hardcore hip hop. You know what I mean? Not regular casual suburban wrestling fans are going to know who Trina is.
Yeah.
But hardcore hip hop, my wife would know who Trina is, and she won't know who Jade is. So it's like, I think the way that they're moving Jade, and again, I don't know if this is AEW creative or just Jade Cargill doing basically she's doing what Swerve wants to do better than Swerve.
She's
starting to do what Sasha was doing in WWE
in many ways, and I think that she will, if she continues doing what she does, and AEW continues to believe in her, then you have a homegrown household name. Max is doing certain things that, like, we shared around in Max's Barstool interview. It's Max on Barstool. Like, it's still not like Roman's on ESPN. Like, Roman's sitting down, Triple H is sitting down with, like, so I say all
yeah.
that to say really quickly that without recognizing that you really do have to have some consistencies in the stars that you build and branch them out, I do think it's a harder watch week to week. It's just a harder watch because you don't know if we're going to get we didn't get the acclaim at all last night.
They did a
backstage with Billy Gunn just to get their catch line.
Which was weird. It was like randomly like he's a drill sergeant or something. I don't.
The acclaim should be on. The acclaim at this point should be getting Uso New Day treatment over at AEW.
Agreed.
Like Max should be rapping every week. You know what I mean?
Week.
And they should start to.
And he was. This was the first week there wasn't one in a long time. So, but granted,
I definitely think that.
Yeah.
I do, again, I think the long-term storytelling, the household name build-up, I mean, again, they are leaps and bounds above Impact and GC, anybody else.
Yeah. They have a TV deal. Well, you know who else is not a household name? Kenny Omega, Tony Khan. I mean, those are not particularly household names either. John Moxley Moxley and Bryan Danielson are household names.
Yeah, but I don't
think as Dean Ambrose, and Daniel Bryan.
My argument to you would be that Moxley and the Bucks don't move the needle nearly as much as I think you would give them credit for. I think
I don't give him any credit for it.
Okay,
yeah, no, I'm not. I'm saying Omega and them are not household names, and that's to your argument. Yes,
but I think you also alluded at the beginning. It was the Bucks aren't on TV and Omega's. I don't think the casual wrestling fan gives a crap. Not yet. I mean,
I agree with that. That was my point. Was it's not that it's like people stop tuning in because they're like, oh, no Kenny Omega this week. It's the chaos that was created by that whole situation where it's like, well, we thought we were going here, here, and here, and now it's just like shake the etch-a-sketch and we'll do whatever. I think let's look quickly. And just because I do think this is important in regards to what will drive audiences to AEW, and we got to trying to figure it out. But Moxley, Danielson, Punk, Chris Jericho,
by far Jericho, Cody Rhodes, right? When we're talking about the real things that would get people to tune in, out of what I mean, to tune in. That was I want to see what the hell is happening because these guys are on TV.
Right.
I don't think it's the other guy. Even a Jeff and Matt Hardy. I think those guys are,
How about Sting?
Nah.
Not really.
I think Sting's past his prime at this point. But
this just shows a difference of what WWE is. All those names you mentioned, they're worth tuning in for because they had entirely other lives at WWE and were household names because almost everybody, but there's a lot of household names because WWE is a household name.
But they were the only game in town.
Right. That's why AEW will always be at this disadvantage and shouldn't try not to be.
It's one of the key things that Tony Khan and company have to figure out, and this is difficult. I'm not saying it's an easy question to answer, but there is some alchemy involved in finding the balance between, to your point, integrating household names into your program to draw people who are maybe lapsed fans or dissatisfied with WWE or whatever, and then elevating new stars. And I think in certain cases they've done a good job with that. In other cases, not so much. And
Darby Allin was a great example. Orange Cassidy is a decent example.
But we're talking about two different things in a way, because I'm not talking about competing with WWE. I'm talking about stopping your nosedive of people not tuning in.
And that's what I'm saying too.
Yeah. I think there's a difference in regards to everybody's made it very clear that they are a what did I don't know how Tony exactly phrased it when he's talking to Ariel, but they are a competition they know that they're a viable number two. And they're happy with that. That's where they want to be. They're counter programming in that sense. But there's no bones about it that they're we're not above WWE.
I don't think they're sweating the ratings then, if that's the case.
I think they're sweating the ratings because it's going in the wrong direction.
Exactly.
And I think you've got to figure out how to get it moving in the right direction.
They're not sweating the ratings in the sense of, oh my God, we're so far from WWE. They're sweating the ratings from the standpoint of like, we used to be around 1 million and now we're like 8.
We're going in the wrong. Anytime you're going in the wrong direction in a significant way, that's a horrible sign in television, because that means somebody's going to look at it and say, hey, what the hell's going on here? And should we continue to invest in this product?
And it's also tough because they can't point to WWE and say, well, yes, we have decreased, but it's all relative. And WWE has also like decreased. WWE the last year or so has been beating the previous year and the year before that. So it's tough. And it's also, as we've talked about in the past, there's also, I think, added pressure now because of the Discovery merger, you know.
That I do agree, but I don't think that makes. I don't think that change. Does that change creative? Like right now, they've got to get a better plan on their.
Right.
You know what I mean? They got to get a more attractive product.
Right.
And I think they've got an attractive product, but they need to get a more attractive product.
Right. What I'm saying is, I think that it makes you more aware of. There's a shorter leash, or there's going to be more scrutiny on you than if it was, 2 years ago, when they're just like, wow, we're the first viable, real alternative to WWE on a national level. This is exciting. It's the honeymoon phase. And now it's more like, we got to deliver.
It's like any business, guys. It's like any business. If you are a business and you launch and you started, of course you're happy to launch, you're happy to be there, you're happy to be a real company. But sooner or later, you're going to want to do better than they did last year. Yeah. Like, even if you're not the top of the line in whatever product you're creating, you want to be moving in the right direction. Yeah. And I do think the last quarter of AEW has been something where we're looking at it like, outside of all the chaos, right? Because the chaos is the chaos as well. Maybe you can blame it on the chaos for now, but guys, they got to right the ship in regards to getting more viewers.
Yeah.
And let me ask this.
I'm not gonna stop watching. I know you two aren't, so I mean, there is a limit to my concern about that, because it's not my company. I will laugh too,
because this conversation is not about the three of us. This has very little to do with the three of us. We're gonna watch either way, but it does have to do with the people that might have tuned in Chicago when CM Punk walked out that first time. Yeah. I do want to talk about it because it's one of my favorite things to talk about, and you guys alluded to it. Jade Cargill did have her coronation, if you will. I guess got her belt back celebration. I don't exactly know what it exactly was. They're building the stupid feud with Bow Wow, but that's my question to you, gentlemen, is her promo was amazing. I thought it was great. It basically comes out and says, I'm the greatest thing here. I was waiting for her to say, like, this includes MJF as well. I'm the biggest thing in this effing company. However, where does Jade Cargill? Who does she feud with? Where does she go? Because it wasn't like anybody ran out to challenge her.
Yeah. So you got a real problem here creatively, and they run into the same thing in their men's tag division, where it's like, you've had these dudes who are super over and have won all these championships, but you're not having them wrestle the guys who are the actual champions, whether it was.
So FTR's not wrestling the Acclaim, is what you're saying.
And eventually they will. But they don't know how to handle that. And I think that's one of the problems here. In the case of Jade, it's really tough booking somebody who is already a champion and who you correctly are booking as an undefeated, unbeatable for right now monster. And like one creative way to do it is to have like, oh, my belt got stolen thing. So then you can still have the excitement, but you can't do that more than once in a while. And now, so she is essentially feuding with her own baddies
right now.
I just don't know. So does this set up Kiera Hogan to fight Jade?
Sure. If she's an undefeated monster, they'll just feed people as long as they can, regardless of who they are.
Kiera Hogan's actually really good. She was like a champion.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. I will tell you this: if I were worked at WWE and for whatever reason they were like, "Hey, look, there's some kind of contractual weird thing. You can have anybody on the entire AEW roster, anybody," I would pick her.
I would agree. I mean.
Put her in the ring with Bianca Belair tomorrow.
This was I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. pretty much she went full heel last night. Like she was heelish before. She's full heel now, right? Or
it's
no?
interesting because she is a heel. I think she's
Yeah.
been a heel, but what was
Always
interesting
been.
about the promo last night, and I said this in the group chat, it's like everything she's saying is correct.
Yeah.
And the best heels, as I always say, the best heels are the ones who have a point.
Yeah, it felt like a wickedly heelish promo. It
Here's
was
the
awesome.
thing.
It was great. I still think. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a good judge of this somehow, but like, wouldn't if she went to WWE a year from now, I feel like Bianca would clean her clock.
They would probably feed her to Bianca just because I'm thinking creatively.
I
There was
like
there
Jade.
was a
She's a star.
there was a time, and we're all old and we remember this. There was a time during those Monday Night Wars where big names would cross over, and when they did cross over, they would basically get fed to like Chris Benoit would get fed to Triple H, and it'd be like, oh, he beat this great. And before they really start their the interesting thing is, I think there's a bigger problem, like you're saying, Tom. I do think there's a problem because how long are you going to keep Jade off of whether it's Brett Baker or Jamie Hayter or someone's got to, like, sooner or later she's got to come. She's too good not to like act like it's not like there's not another belt out there that's technically bigger than hers. So she has to go and get it. And I think if AEW is smart, they hold it off as long as they can. But when the time comes, she doesn't lose. Like, she doesn't get to Brett Baker and lose. She does what Goldberg did and beats Hogan and takes the belt off of him. And it's just like, you know what I mean? I think it's that way. Gentlemen, we're coming on 52 minutes, and I still have a lot to talk about that I'll kind of try to breeze through. The score now is Death Triangle 2.
Yep.
The Elite 1, because the Elite pulled off the victory last night. Interesting fashion, as Pac was going for one of the greatest finishing, one of the most acrobatic finishing moves I've ever seen. I love when he does it every time. Jackson gets the knees up, turns him over, pins him. There's no hammer cheating this time in regards to how Death Triangle won both of their first two matches. I love these matches because, again, I told you, give me the Lucha Brothers in any place, anyway. I'm all in. But what do we think? I mean, obviously this goes 7, but how do we think this shakes out?
I think we definitely go 7. But
yeah,
last night we're seeing the continuing, again, speaking about factions that are headed toward collapse. We got some more teases last night that these guys are not long for the world either, because, Pac has had this tension with Penta about the hammer last night.
Ray Phoenix.
Ray
Penta
Phoenix
always seems to be
right. Yeah,
down to win.
Last night, Penta dove out of the way, and Phoenix caught the knee from Omega, and they sort of looked at each other. So, like, I think, the in the know fan is seeing where this might go, and we're eventually going to see these guys feud. But I'm here for all of it because the moves are great. These matches, the timing, and in the case of last night, particularly, I think even more so than the first two, the storytelling is now evolving, and like I'm now seeing the way I like watching wrestling is seeing things and getting these hints and making these predictions about what's going to happen. It became a little more clear for me last night, and I'm all about it. Still not a Bucks fan by any stretch of the imagination. I think I like Nick a lot more than the other one, but I'm Matt perhaps. But yeah, the Omega looks terrific. These guys do things that very few can do. So I can't wait to see, the next 4 matches, 5 matches, 4 matches.
4. What do you think about the Elite versus the Death Triangle, Tom?
I think the matches are great. No question about that. Part of me is like, would it be interesting if they didn't go 7? Like, if just whoever ultimately wins, if they just like mixed it up a little bit and didn't go the full 7. I think there's a part of me that is like, let's put it this way. I would rather, from a rooting standpoint, I think I would rather see Death Triangle win the series.
Oh, of course.
But as you guys talked about, the story seems to be pointing in the direction of Death Triangle's dissension is just going to get worse as the series goes on, and ultimately will be the deciding factor that costs them the championships. So I think that's probably where it winds up. I don't know. I mean, here's a silver lining creatively. If the end result of everything that happened from the all-out fracas and everything there, and then with the Elite being suspended and all that, if the end result is we're going to have the Elite sort of, I don't want to say fade into the background, but sort of be siloed as like, we're the trios champions. We're going to put on great matches, but we're like storyline wise, like we're not going to be in the world title picture. We're just going to be doing our own thing in these great matches and having feuds with whoever, House of Black, for example. I'm totally good with that. And I think it would be better for the company as they try to sort of stop the bleeding or rebuild their audience, whatever you want to call it, for that to be the case. I think right now that would be for the next 6 to 12 months. I think that would be a wise course of action and build people like Ricky Stark,
Powerhouse Hobbs. Exactly. Yep. It'd be good for those guys, especially. Absolutely. Having that trio, having that trio, I think, Tom, I completely agree with you. There's lots of people on the roster that could benefit from those three being important people to watch because of their abilities, not because they take up a spot in a title picture.
Gentlemen, do we like Jon Moxley versus Hangman Page? They were brawling all over the arena last night.
Yeah, Page must be okay and good. That's what I'm most glad to see is Page, taking some physicality. Moxley isn't going to jump right back into the title picture. I'd like to see Page in it at some point, but I'm fine with it. Yeah, give me some. It's a good story, because it's the way it sort of has evolved with Page's injury. But yeah, I'm all about it.
Moxley's always good. I think the question I have about this is this going to just be a short-term thing because they really didn't do a proper finish to their previous encounter? Or is this going to be something that, occupies both guys for, let's say, into the new year and beyond? And I think that the answer to that question is really going to dictate, I think, kind of some other things, because as we talked about earlier, it seems like MJF has telegraphed in a good way who his opponents are going to be for the foreseeable future. And if that's the case, then it might behoove the company to have these two guys in Moxley and Page go up against each other over the long term and give them something to do where they both have a really good spotlight, and they don't complicate sort of the world title picture, especially with like if Danielson is going to be a part of it too, then you have an extra complication for like, what is that relationship?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this is a good spot for both of them in a high profile, high notoriety matches, feud, if you will. And it also kind of moves them into a silo, if you will, that doesn't have them, really good place where, if we're kind of comparing it, really good places where a guy like Randy Orton might be or a long time or an Edge. Like, you don't need the belt, but you have a good feud. You have a good partner you're working with. Let's give the people some real strong entertainment. And I think that's a good place. Gentlemen, we are hitting the little bit past 9:00. I do want to finish on some. Let's do some quick hit roundups because there's still a lot to talk about. But we also got to be mindful of our time here on the Thursday night. So quick hits. It'll be all companies, but quickly as possible. Street Profits return. What do we think? We happy? What are we going to do with this?
I'm happy to see Montez Ford back. He is someone worth tuning in for to watch. They're going to keep those two together, and I think they'll have all those mid card feuds. But the product is good when you get 6-7 minutes of watching Montez Ford show off. We can do even in Angela Dawkins also, and there's nothing wrong with seeing him and the Alpha Academy and the Brawling Brutes just sort of go around and round. I'm happy they're back. Yeah.
Glad to see him back. I think they're in a holding pattern, probably through WrestleMania because of what's going on with the Bloodline storyline. There is a scenario where they are the guys who maybe challenge the Usos at WrestleMania if the main event is occupied by the other elements of that. I think all of this ultimately is just, I don't want to say stalling, but eventually it's going to be Montez Ford as a singles just superstar. And that probably doesn't happen in the next 4 months, of course, with everything else going on, but that's where we're headed long term.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that Bianca and Montez has a reality show as well that's coming, so that's exciting as well.
We talk about Bray. We talk about Bray Wyatt real quick.
Yes, I was gonna get to that too. Let me ask one other question. I was gonna ask another question before we get to that.
Yeah.
And World Cup Finals now is set. It is Ricochet versus Escobar, right? What any thoughts on this? Who comes out on top?
I don't care about the World Cup aspect to it. That's just whatever. For me, it's like both stars, both people were worth elevating. Ricochet, you have him win. You ought to then elevate him higher than where he's been. And there are places to go, but like he's, for the reasons you said, TG, he's not going to be in the title picture, for months. So where he's at right now is where he's at. If your idea is to elevate stars, and you have Escobar win and kind of establish him. So I'm kind of hoping Escobar wins just for that, because Ricochet needs the rub, but if you're trying to build up new stars so you can for a next generation, Escobar's one that you're invested in. Let him take it. That's my opinion.
This is a tough one because Gunther obviously won the title originally from Ricochet, so they've already had their deal. But on the other hand, Escobar is a heel, and it would be weird for Gunther to have his next challenger be a heel. So my theory is this: I think Escobar does win, and I think they have an Intercontinental Championship match that devolves and breaks down and is inconclusive, and then it becomes a feud between Legado del Fantasma and Imperium. Which is still weird because they're both strong heel groups.
Yep.
I don't get it, but the alternative is you give him Ricochet again, which of course I love watching Ricochet work, but it's like I don't think the ultimate result is going to be any different. I mean, why would you take the title off Gunther right now? I don't get that, but
I don't know why, but I've always been a strong believer in Ricochet. I think Ricochet gets the shot, and I think because of exactly what you said before, in order to make it different, you don't feed Ricochet to Gunther again.
Agreed.
You give him you put the belt back on him.
It'll be well, I don't know if he wins, but it'll definitely be a more competitive match than
I'm gonna go with. I mean, I don't know why. I don't have a real good reason for this. I also don't think in NXT. How do you say it? Legado Fantasma.
Legado del Fantasma.
Legado del Fantasma.
So
and NXT
rusty, but I don't get why it's Del Fantasma, because Fantasma is feminine and Del is
the biggest feud that they had in NXT was with Hit Row. Swerve led Hit Row, by the way. And I just saw the other day Hit Row get fed to the Viking Raiders like in a squash match, basically. And so I'm just like, what is going on here? So
by the way, I think that's going to be the feud you'll see if they have Viking Raiders and Street Profits.
Yeah, they'll be back. But again, I will say this: history said they've been there, done that, and it was so dumb. They were doing basketball dunk contests.
No,
competition.
That was a very Vince.
Yes,
but it was
that's
also
not happening again.
Completely different than what the Viking Raiders are even now.
Right.
Now they're threatening.
It's insane.
Yeah, so I think it'll be interesting. I would like to see that feud with both teams in their current forms now.
Speaking of squash matches, and we'll finish on the Bray Wyatt note, but the squash match that I did have to laugh about as well is, remember when Ari Daivari was supposed to be a thing in AEW? He was really. Does anybody remember this? I remember this. It was the Trust Busters. Ari Daivari is getting promo time. He brings in the guy from NXT. Was it
Parker
Boudreaux?
Yeah.
They had a whole faction. Ari Daivari got squashed in literally 2 moves to Ricky Starks last night. And I just laughed.
see my earlier comments about
it's
AEW. It's like, oh, these people are
Yeah.
important. 2 weeks later,
It's insane.
not on the show or
Right.
squashed. Like, I don't.
So rumor has it that Bray Wyatt does indeed have a stranglehold on his own creative, basically.
Oh,
And
nice.
this is with the dark sheets that I try not to read.
Mhm.
Have basically said that he almost has like carte blanche with like the Wyatt Six, all like his creative. And so the rumor is that they are leading to a match with LA Knight, but it'll be a special type of Bray Wyatt match. It may not even happen this year, and it's a Tom. You would actually appreciate this because me and you talked about this ad nauseum. An example of like what Bray did with John Cena at WrestleMania, but it was like I think they were talking about a lights out match where LA Knight might fight all 6 of Bray's personalities.
I'm
That
all
type,
about it.
that
I'm
type
all
of
about it.
thing.
Do
So
it.
so I don't know, Elliot. The flow is yours. What is your Bray Wyatt update here?
Well, my question was going to be like just sort of putting it out there. Where are we at today? But Cheats, you've sort of alluded to where we're at today. Honestly, I was surprised that Bray and LA White and LA Knight. That's strange, but like you got to have him do something. So it's just fine, and it's good. It's good. Anyone who's working with Bray is going to get a rub from this. LA Knight, getting beaten up is not going to hurt LA Knight. He's actually too good a talent, too big a star for that to happen. So I think he's a good foil for this. If that's the case with him having carte blanche and having these sort of dramatic matches that aren't your traditional match, go for it. I'm convinced that Bray will not need to get involved in any sort of title picture for over a year. He's a different character. He does not fit the same. He's not in the same way we think about talent and stars and storylines and feuds. He is outside that, above that. He's able to work somewhere else. He'll be this. And I see Tom nodding my head, so he knows what I'm talking about. Yeah, we do not need different objectives for Bray. Bray creates the objectives. Let him give him carte blanche. Let him in that mind of his create these fantasies that are going to be unlike we've seen in a long time, or unlike we've ever seen, and they are going to draw eyes for the fans. I'm stammering because I love his creativity so much, and he's about to give us things we haven't seen anything we've never seen before in a long time in wrestling. And I think we're on the cusp of seeing 2023 just being this really sports entertainment drama, mystery, horror, thriller that his creative mind can do. And I am absolutely along for the ride, knowing that we're not going to see him in tights doing flips, even doing Sister Abigail. It's going to be completely different. It's going to be psychological, and I'm all for it.
So a couple of things. One is we've used this word a few times tonight. Bray Wyatt is, and what Cheatham just said about sort of his creative control over this character. Bray Wyatt is siloed creatively, which is not a bad thing.
Uh-huh.
I think, to your point, Elliot, Bray Wyatt is to the rest of the roster what Crown Jewel is to the other premium live events. He is sort of in this parallel universe that is definitely part of this, but also kind of separate. And I think that, the theory that I never got to last time I was on the show, in the succinct version, is one possibility for the Wyatt Six is definitely the 6 different, the 6 faces of Wyatt, if you want to put it that way. I think another possibility that I had in mind was he is sort of identifying potentially people who, have been misused or out of character in the past, and is collecting them into a group one of whom could be LA Knight because, of course, the Max Dupree stuff. One of whom is clearly going to be something with Alexa Bliss, one way or another. Something is happening there. But another one could be somebody like Karrion Kross, who has been really de-emphasized on TV ever since the final match with.
Right. It didn't make sense initially because he was brought out talking to Roman, getting in a high profile with Drew. He's now seems like an ideal person to be a co-pilot or a second or third mate.
Right. So the idea would be you have a collection of these people who are sort of these, I don't want to say, well, in a literal sense, misfits, where they were, portraying one person on TV, but they're really somebody very different. Like an LA Knight is, that's the real him. And then the Max Dupree was just some weird thing that he did. So I think that's where we may be heading. And I think, as we've talked about a lot, and as you just said, I mean, we may not see him wrestle. I mean, maybe he'll have a match at WrestleMania. I mean, I think that's likely, but I may not be before then, and it's not going to be this year. And to throw one other thing on this in conclusion, I think that he's a very smart guy, not just creative, but smart as well. And I think one thing that he would probably be the first to say, and I think a lot of people who watched his prior runs in WWE would be the first to say, was the weakest part of his stories or whatever was the in-ring piece, not bad wrestling, but rather the creative decisions that happened during matches or things that emanated from those matches. And I think that by putting himself in this silo, that he's smart enough to realize we don't need to see, and to your point, Elliot, this is sort of the new, to me, is like the new piece of this, or the variation that we haven't seen. This is a character who is a wrestler. In theory, he is a wrestler, but we don't need to see him wrestle.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least we don't need to see him wrestle very often. And that makes him more interesting, not less. With most guys never wrestling, I mean, not to pick on him, but how interesting would Ricochet be if he never wrestled?
Right.
I mean, Ricochet is amazing in the ring, and obviously never wrestled. Like, why would you? So I it's, and final thing I'll say about this, this to me is why, as good as MJF is, and there's no question he's great. Bray Wyatt is more interesting to me, and the reason is because as well as great a performer as MJF is, before he even does his promo, I could probably predict 80 to 90% of what he's going to say. Maybe not the exact verbiage, but the talking.
Mm-hmm.
I could write, because he's a classic heel who's going to say certain things. Bray Wyatt, I don't know what's going on. And as I've said a couple of times, there's a fine line sometimes between mystery and confusion, and you don't want to go too far on the confusion side. But the mystery part is really intriguing.
It's interesting that you say that, because the one thing I will say, and this isn't about just like MJF, I'm just thinking of just like the greatest of all time when we talk about the wrestling industry. I did want to see him fight. Like, that's the one interesting thing about what Wyatt's doing now, is it's extremely interesting. I think you're extremely right. I think it's extremely interesting. I still don't necessarily know, like, how the setup goes where it's like, I want to see him fight LA Knight. I just, I kind of want to see him do weird things.
Think about, he's going to do that. LA Knight, the finality with LA Knight's not really important. What it's going to happen and build is like this, it'll be the breakdown and the rebuild of Bray's psyche.
Yeah. And
but at some point,
I wanted to see the Fiend fight.
He will.
Like, I like the Fiend.
He will.
I want to see the Fiend fight.
When Bray when Bray reaches full consciousness, whatever that is in his head, he will then unleash himself on everybody else, and that's when you'll see the violence and the fighting.
I think the intrigue here, it's like an episode of the old Incredible Hulk TV show, which is the whole story is he's getting his buttons pushed, but you're watching to see him turn green. And I think that's kind of the intrigue here with Wyatt, is like, what's really going on with him? What is Uncle Howdy exactly? Like, what is that?
Him? I mean, I get it, and I like it, and I like all the stuff that builds up to it. At this point, though, I'm not interested in seeing him wrestle. Like, that's why he can go a year or whatever, as long as he can, without actually being in the ring, which is fine, because I don't want to see him get punched. I kind of want to see MJF get punched in the face. Like, I want to see it happen.
True.
And
Yes.
I, like I said, I go back to, I do think that there is going to be a time you can't give 16 minutes to MJF every week to do what he did last night. Like, and I have a feeling that AEW is going to give at least 13 to 14 minutes, at least 10, for MJF to do something of that every week per se until he does wrestle. But I think, in my humble opinion, and I'm glad. Look, shout out to Megan. I'm glad she's not on the show right now, because I think Flair is still like the greatest of all time in regards to the actual business of really wanting to see someone get punched in the face every week. And he would be able to come out every week on television, and it felt different to me. It really did. And it felt funny, and it felt insulting, but it was also like, it always seemed to work to be like, man, I hope Dusty Rhodes or Magnum or somebody just kicks the crap out of him.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't,
yeah.
and I don't, I understand what Bray is doing is going to be a completely different kind of thing and build up and wind up. I actually prefer it to be on Raw instead of SmackDown, because Raw's 3 hours. I'd like that distraction in there.
Yeah.
But I still got to get to a point where I want to see Bray fight. And right now, and I don't like LA Knight. It's a cute thing, and I know that might not be the end all be all, but I do want to see him fight. You know who else I want to see fight, guys? Before we get out of here, Jay Lethal, and Darius Lockhart, and all the wonderful people that we talk about on this show. Interesting twist for the Dark Order with 10 turning on the old guys there, and taking his mask off, and I guess change his name back to Preston Vance, and looking at -1 and being like, "See you later, buddy." So, it's a whole thing. There's a lot going on in the wrestling business. Gentlemen, I love this time. We got to get out of here. Final thoughts. I will start with you, TG. I don't know if you have a face or a heel or something that you want to close your final argument
with. I have one specific thing.
Go ahead,
buddy. Heel of the week, in a good way. The only thing that I enjoyed from the last probably month to month and a half of the Dexter Lumis, Miz, Johnny Gargano, Angle, whatever storyline, was when Lumis, after he won and he handed out the money to the kids, Miz giving the money back from the kid. I was like, that's some good heel work.
That was a good heel work. That was good heel work. That was funny.
That's it for me.
Elliot, what do you got?
I got to go. I'll be quick, but I got to go off wrestling, and I'd be remiss if I just didn't address it. Kanye is an awful, awful, awful person. What he said, the things he has been saying have been unforgivable. Today, he had a total meltdown, and I'm not cool with it at all. And like, get this guy off all media, and B, get him some help. But Kanye, you can't say shit like that, man. You can't. You're gonna get called the heel of the week on a podcast if you come out and say shit like that. You're terrible. Just get some help.
That you can echo that for the last 2-3 months now. I mean, I don't know where. I don't know. It was
different. It was different today, and it was gross, and it's just gross.
It's been that way, my man.
Yeah.
And he's and I echo your sentiment on that. There's so many things that we can close this show on, but I will close it on a positive note. We had a fun debate in our house about what to do Saturday morning. Should we go to the Richmond Christmas parade, or should we stay home and watch the World Cup? Because the USA has qualified to the knockout stage.
Yeah.
Play the Netherlands Saturday morning. And I've actually, like every casual American soccer fan, has kind of fallen in love with this particular team and watched every game. So there's a million things we can talk about, but as a person that I think, Elliot, you know this, I've journeyed into the beautiful game over the last 2 years, watching a lot of English Premier League and Champions League, and seeing the way that American press talks about Team USA is one thing. If you'd gone anywhere else, I follow Liverpool quite a bit. If you looked at the British press and they talked about the game going into, I guess it was Black Friday. It was like the game after Thanksgiving. Like it was, if you'd asked any of them, it was 4-0 England, 2-0 England. It was like these kids are not. She didn't even deserve to be on the same pitch with England. And the American press. The interesting thing was the American press also had almost like a bias, like, hey, let's get it done against Iran. We're a better team and so forth. No one else globally besides the USA had that take. Everybody thought
most takes were 2-1 Iran. 2-1
Iran was
Iran.
going to win that game. And so it was really interesting to see how the global press looks at the World Cup and obviously looks at Team USA. They've already, they're playing with house money in many ways, I think. But if they can get past Saturday, I'd be really excited. So I'm wishing them the best as we go into the knockout stages of the World Cup. Have you guys been watching? Have you followed the soccer match?
I had to take my son to urgent care because he bruised his hand celebrating the goal by slamming against the sofa, and he hit like the wood end of the sofa, and he's in a splint now. So yeah, he's enjoying it. He's celebrating.
I guess you're lucky that there's not more scoring in soccer, or else that could have been
we'd still be at the hospital.
Oh man! Well, gentlemen,
I always root for the USA. I don't watch a lot of soccer, but I so we do well.
Hey, before we're out, quick shout out to our girl Megan, our Heel and Heels. We were thinking about her and her family. My twin niece and nephew turned 12 years old yesterday, and I said I would shout them out. So shout out Annie and Leo. Love you too. Follow us on our socials, and Mark, I'll let you close.
Yeah, we're gonna get you out of here. We're counting you out on 3. Everyone, it's 1, 2, 3. Until next time.
Peace.